Imagine a continent that's supposed to be frozen year-round. It is melting before our eyes. In early 2025, Antarctica's sea ice dropped to a record low just 1.98 million square kilometers, marking the fourth consecutive year below 2 million square kilometers. That's a dramatic decline from early 2000s levels, when seasonal lows hovered closer to 2.8 million square kilometers. Scientists warn this isn't just seasonal variability or a one-off anomaly. It's part of a growing and alarming trend, one that is reshaping the polar regions and potentially destabilizing the global climate system as we know it. Since satellite tracking began in 1979, the fluctuations in Antarctic sea ice had often run counter to those in the Arctic, with some years even showing increases. But that pattern has now broken. The loss is accelerating. Since 2002, Antarctica has shed an average of 136 billion metric tons of ice each year. That's the weight equivalent of roughly 272,000 Empire State Buildings melting into the ocean annually. To visualize this amount of fresh water entering the ocean each year is nearly impossible, but its effects are already being felt far beyond the icy shores of the southern continent. One of the most profound impacts of this ice loss is its disruption to the Antarctic circumpolar current. This is the strongest ocean current on Earth, flowing unbroken around the continent and acting as a conveyor belt that mixes deep, cold waters with warmer layers from lower latitudes. It's a central player in regulating Earth's climate. As Antarctic sea ice disappears, vast quantities of fresh water enter this system, altering its salinity and density. That change, in turn, slows down the formation of Antarctic bottom water, one of the engines of the global ocean conveyor belt. When this conveyor slows or stalls, the consequences ripple outward. Weather systems shift. Rainfall patterns change. Storms grow stronger and more frequent. The delicate equilibrium that determines agricultural zones, fisheries, and even hurricane strength begins to wobble. What makes this situation more alarming is how this meltwater affects Earth's rotation. It may sound like science fiction, but it's very real. As massive amounts of ice melt and redistribute water from the poles toward the equator, Earth's mass balance changes. This slightly alters the planet's rotation, causing it to spin just a bit faster, shortening the length of each day by microseconds. This might seem trivial at first, but these shifts affect satellite timing, GPS accuracy, and international timekeeping standards. It's a reminder that what happens in Antarctica doesn't stay in Antarctica. The melting ice isn't just a regional crisis. It's a global systems disruption. Across the world, weather patterns are already bearing the scars of polar destabilization. In Europe, for instance, scientists have linked increased flooding and erratic rainfall to altered jet stream behavior, which in turn is being influenced by shifting polar temperatures. In North America, prolonged droughts in some areas are being offset by unusually harsh winters in others. Meanwhile, Southeast Asia is experiencing erratic monsoons, and the Pacific has seen multiple back-to-back cyclone seasons, something climate scientists didn't expect until much later this century. These regional crises are becoming economic ones too. Agricultural yields are down. Insurance premiums are rising. Coastal infrastructure is under strain. Back at the pole, temperatures are spiking in ways that few believed possible even a decade ago. In March 2022, for instance, temperatures in East Antarctica soared more than 40 degrees Celsius above normal. While it was once considered the coldest place on Earth, Antarctica is becoming increasingly unstable. As coastal temperatures rise, the vast ice shelves that hold back glaciers from flowing into the ocean are fracturing. When these ice shelves break apart, they no longer act as dams, and the glaciers behind them surge forward, accelerating sea level rise. This process is already underway. The Thwaites Glacier, often nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier, has been losing ice rapidly and could raise global sea levels by over 65 centimeters if it collapses completely. But Thwaites isn't alone. Multiple glacier systems in West Antarctica are on the brink. Perhaps the most worrying part is how this affects the formation of deep ocean water. Normally, cold salty water around Antarctica sinks and helps drive the global thermaline circulation. But as more fresh meltwater dilutes the ocean salinity, this process weakens. Without this circulation, warm tropical waters won't be pulled downward and cold waters won't rise as easily. This could dramatically weaken the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation (AMO-KIA) system. Scientists warn is already slowing and may collapse entirely this century. If AMO-C collapses, the Northern Hemisphere would see much colder winters, extreme storms, and agricultural failure. The Sahara could become green again. India's monsoon system could shut down. Western Europe could freeze, even as the rest of the world warms. Meanwhile, marine ecosystems are being thrown off balance. Sea ice provides vital habitat for krill, the foundation of the Southern Ocean food chain. Penguins, seals, and whales depend on them. As ice disappears, krill populations decline, starving predators and shrinking biodiversity. Fisheries that rely on stable ocean temperatures and nutrient cycling are being disrupted too. Plankton levels are falling, and with them the carbon, SINK potential of the oceans. Remember, the ocean absorbs about 25% of the CO we emit. Disrupting this process means more carbon remains in the atmosphere, accelerating warming. Despite the magnitude of these changes, global policy responses remain inadequate. Some nations have rolled back environmental pledges made in Glasgow. Fossil fuel expansion continues in regions like the US, China, and the Middle East. Methane emissions, an even more potent greenhouse gas than CO, are still rising. Meanwhile, key ice monitoring satellites are aging, and funding for polar research is facing cuts in many countries. Climate scientists are warning that we're rapidly approaching irreversible tipping points. Once lost, the ice sheets may take millennia to recover if ever. But it's not all doom. Climate models still offer hope. Under low-emission scenarios, we can preserve a significant portion of Antarctica's sea ice and slow the weakening of global circulation systems. Investments in renewable energy, carbon capture, and green infrastructure could stabilize the climate. Countries like Denmark, Costa Rica, and New Zealand are leading the way with ambitious net zero targets and ecosystem restoration programs. Technology is also advancing. Artificial intelligence is now being used to model ice behavior and predict future collapses with greater accuracy. Drones and autonomous submarines are mapping ice shelf underbellies, giving scientists critical data. Public awareness is growing too. Documentaries, protests, and climate lawsuits are forcing leaders to act. Youth movements have made polar issues mainstream. And perhaps most importantly, the economic narrative is shifting. Businesses are beginning to realize that investing in sustainability isn't just ethical, it's profitable. Green energy is outcompeting fossil fuels in many markets. Climate risk is becoming a key metric in investment portfolios. Still, the road ahead is steep. What we do in the next 5 to 10 years will determine the trajectory of the next 100. A failure to reduce emissions now could lock in catastrophic outcomes. Sea level rise of up to 2 meters by 2100 would displace hundreds of millions. Major cities like New York, Shanghai, Mumbai, and Lagos would need trillions in adaptation measures or be abandoned. Agriculture would have to shift inland, displacing populations and threatening food security. Insurance companies would collapse under the weight of climate disasters. and geopolitical tensions would rise as nations compete for shrinking resources and livable land. On the other hand, a coordinated global effort could create a more resilient world. Reforestation, wetland restoration, sustainable fishing, and circular economies could all form part of the solution. If Antarctica teaches us anything, it's that nature is both fragile and powerful. The changes happening at the bottom of the world are warnings, visible, measurable, and immediate. We can't say we didn't see them coming. So what should we take from all this? First, the Antarctic isn't a remote wasteland. It's a keystone of Earth's stability. What happens there affects everything, from the water you drink to the food you eat to the storms that hit your city. Second, every ton of CO matters. Every policy, every vote, every investment counts. We still have agency. And third, adaptation must go hand in hand with mitigation. We need seawalls, smart agriculture, and resilient infrastructure. Yes, but we also need to stop the problem at its source. It's time to treat Antarctic melt not as a distant scientific curiosity, but as the global emergency it is. Because whether we act or not, the ice is melting. The currents are slowing, the storms are strengthening, and the clock is ticking. Antarctica doesn't speak, but if it did, it would scream. Comment below. How concerned are you about Antarctic? Ice melt? Do you think governments are doing enough? Should climate change be treated like a global emergency, or do you believe it's overstated? Let your voice be heard, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into climate, tech, and the future of our planet.